Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Mastoma Vidvishavai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great vigor and energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So, as usual, this is a question answer session orientated towards seekers. That is, it's an opportunity for people to highlight any difficulties they may have in practical spiritual life or to query any principle that supports it. And so I will mute myself while you formulate any questions.
I have a question, Swamiji. So,
Great.
So last week when you mentioned that really it's the future and future thinking that causes anxiety, that causes worry, and that removing yourself from that in some way can, because you can't affect the future. I personally, I would find that. But does that mean that you completely remove yourself from future planning, or that you don't concern yourself with the future in any way at all because it causes you stress? And I'm just wondering if you could expand on that a little bit.
Okay. In terms of the future, there's a principle we have to take into account. And that is that there's a causal principle. If we want to find out what the causal connections are, we have to peel back various layers. We can take any sample of the universe and do it, and we come to a unity of existence behind everything. This principle has to be repeated time and time again. And we trace everything back once we understand that what is in front as objects and the instruments that catch it, made from the same material, are really combinations of subtle forces. And these subtle forces come from one single unitary entity, a cosmic mind. That means any thought that we produce will go on infallibly and find its condensation somewhere in what we interpret as the future. So we are mapping out the future as we speak now. Every thought that you make, every movement, subtle movement in that area, that is the substation of the cosmic mind called my mind, is a way of going back, tracing ourselves back to the original thinker. And the original thinker being infallible, the thought will carry through unless suitably neutralized in the next second or the next second or the next second. And that neutralization takes the shape of doubt, fear, temptation, negativity generally. So for good or evil, for positive or negative, for plus or minus, whatever thought movement occurs acts as a kind of stirring mechanism for all the waves in the universe that ultimately condense. It's just like under suitable conditions, when there's heat and moisture, then an evaporation of water takes place from the oceans, leaves the salt behind, collects as cloudy materials. That cloudy material, consisting of water vapor, is lighter than air itself, and therefore floats above a layer of earth, above a layer of air, causing a kind of vacuum. When it accumulates sufficiently and the pressure increases, then that water, then being heavier now, condenses, having evaporated previously, and falls as rainfall. And we know the rest of the story. In fact, there's an understanding in the Upanishadic literature that the various beings are reborn on this earth through this various mechanism as raindrops. Raindrops, of course, forming the basis of all life, since all life is based on water, and water originally comes from the raindrops. But that's not really the original start of the cycle. Start of the cycle is a perpetual cycle. So that means, therefore, that whatever we think becomes our kalpataru, our wish-fulfilling tree. Sri Ramakrishna gives that wonderful example of the man who traveled a long distance and, being very tired, lies down under a tree. He doesn't know it's a wish-fulfilling tree. He doesn't know it's a wish-fulfilling tree, a kalpataru. And so, being tired, he lies down under the tree and says, I wish there was a comfortable bed beneath me. And sure enough, in an instant, a bed is presented and he lies on it. He doesn't think much about it because he's too tired to think and analyze the whole thing. And then he says, my goodness, after resting a little while, I do feel hungry. I wish I had. And he mentally names all the delicacies he can think of. And there immediately appears all the delicacies in front of him, and he eats to his heart's content. So hungry, he doesn't even analyze or think about this. Lies down on the bed again and thinks, my feet are so sore and tired. If there was somebody who was able to massage them with tender, loving care, immediately a maiden appears. And there he gets this massage. And then he thinks to himself, I can't believe all this is happening. He now has a chance to analyze things a little bit and wonder what happened. And blinking, he says to himself, I can't believe my good luck. I hope things continue like this, because imagine if a tiger comes and spoils it all. And sure enough, exactly then a tiger comes, and he, in much embarrassment, finds himself up the tree. So this, what we call nature, is a flexible combination of waves that combine in combinations and permutations and condenses this so-called world in front of us as the lower echelon of existence itself. And we know that it is so coarse and crude. We know it is not the sum totality of everything, because there's a shifting, changing landscape in front of us. And we know that things are momentarily there, and they are conditioned, they are dependent. They're dependent on my view of things. They're dependent on the particular arrangement, non-standard arrangement, consisting of the particular eyes and ears and so on. We know that an owl has a different faculty, is able to see at night. We know that, I just mute you there, thank you. We know that dogs can hear high-pitched sounds. There are sheepdogs, and the owner blows a whistle. It's not even understood by the human ear. Only the dog can hear this. We can see how a chameleon has a rotating eye socket that can move 360 degrees. Most unnerving when you see it. We see that a fly doesn't have one eye. That eye is divided like a television set, or like looking at television sets in a window. And there you see a whole range of pictures, same pictures being played. Let's say a cricket match. It's not that multiple cricket matches are taking place. A fly is able to catch multiple visions of something so that a slight movement will alarm it. So we all have different faculties. That means it results in different interpretation of what is there. And so our thought is powerful. There is nothing more powerful than human thought. It has the capacity to rearrange things, the capacity to map out our future. So we should be concerned with the future, absolutely. that whatever we think now, and whatever thought translates itself into activity, whatever word comes out of the mouth, whatever thought, word, or deed emanates from us, will have its telling effect on us and also on everything else. There's no
And
good
Swamiji, can that happen with the collective as well?
Yes, yes, everyone has that substation, yes. So the collectivity will do it, because thought is, you see, thought ultimately is undivided. Only when it arrives at our substation will it become divided. So the power of collective prayer is there, but it has to have faith. I'm pretty sure, in other words, no second has to be inserted. I'll always remember, and I'm sure you're tired of me giving this example, but it's a vivid example. And so we did the Enneagram course over 2 weekends. And so between, as usual, 2 weeks and the second weekend, how was your week and what happened? And there was one particular personality. Those who've done the Enneagram will understand when I say number 8. And said, well, in this drought season, we went to Johannesburg, and there we went into a huge stadium of maybe something like 70, 80,000 people. And we all prayed for rain. I said, that's good. He says, no, it was appalling. I was absolutely astonished and appalled. So I said, well, why was that? He says, do you know, Swamiji, not one person brought an umbrella. So you see, faith is unwavering conviction in this sense. You put a thought in, you underline it, you support it, you repeat it, you endorse it, you eat it, you drink it, you sleep it. There's no doubt it will materialize. But unfortunately, of course, the human frame being what it is, the next moment we put a doubt in. The next moment we put in a fear. Jesus gives the formula, by the way. In an event where he's walking and disciples are also walking, and he sees an olive tree, or a fig tree, sorry, and he curses it. It's not bearing fruit. And his followers are astonished at this apparently miraculous deed. But he uses it as an opportunity for a lesson. He says, greater things than this can you do. If you say to that mountain, come and move, it'll do it. And then he gives the formula. Believe that it is already accomplished. You put it in the past tense, already accomplished. Some people say, will you pray for me? And can I have this? Can I have that? Through your divine influence. Not knowing that I don't really have any secret formula. I just have a past recipe, already accomplished. Yes, already accomplished. May I pass my university exam and get a diploma? Yes, already accomplished. And I put it in the person's mind. Oh, once you're receiving your diploma, who will you invite? Oh, my mother, father, and so on. Will you invite me also? Oh, yes, I have to invite you. All right, I'll be there. I'll be sitting in the front row. I'll be applauding you and praising you. So that it reinforces this idea. Yes, already accomplished. Already accomplished a past deed. So we map out the future. Now, supposing we are not certain about all of that, supposing we are orientated toward the future constantly in terms of planning things out. Now, of course, in commercial life, we all have to make strategic plans. It's not about that. It's about setting a goal somewhere and leaving it where it is. Supposing I want to climb a mountain. I don't know what's at the top, but I'm sure there's a top. And I take every measure to do it. Training day and night. If I'm obsessed with the goal itself, then how will I enjoy the journey? So there was somebody who corresponded with me yesterday. Was it yesterday or the day before? And writes something like this, a similar question like this. I'll try and get it up. And says, when you don't have goals, you don't have fear. When you have a journey, you have an experience. So don't live for a goal, live for a journey, for you will experience a life without fear. I think I understand what you mean by you don't have goals. Yes, that's so liberating. I have a purpose, but I don't have a goal, this person writes. I think they're very different things. And my reply is yes. My purpose is to climb the mountain, as an example, and discover the top. My joy is to discover the flora and fauna on the way. Now, right now, right here, right now. Leaving the goal of the top where it is, I enjoy the journey. I enjoy the journey experience. The whole totality is the divine. So a step further has to be gotten. Not only is the divine at the end of the journey your overall purpose, your overall goal in life. See, Swami Vivekananda also expresses it in the language of goals. But one goal, not goals multiple. Each soul is potentially divine. The goal, singular, is to manifest the divinity from within. So we have a goal. Every goal will have to be in the future, because manifesting takes time, normally speaking. But it doesn't have to either, because of your nature is full and free and perfect. If your totality is already there, already accomplished, then the idea of a future tense doesn't arise even in that statement. I can manifest it now. I can have a goal now, manifest it now. But for most people, they post a goal in the future. But that doesn't mean to say we have to continuously be obsessed with it. We leave the goal where it is with great faith and confidence that it is already accomplished. It is just the effort, the time lag that has to catch up with it. And in the meantime, what will I do? I will enjoy the flora and fauna of the journey. I'll enjoy the journey itself. And this is why Sri Ramakrishna puts us with two sides of the same coin, putting the nitya, the goal, the eternal, on the one side, the fact of pure existence on the one side, and on the other side, the lila, the joy of this performance now, this game now. What other explanation can there be? Reynold Johnson, who writes The Imprisoned Splendor, he writes in the last chapter, the only sense we can make out of this thing that we call life is when we take the Oriental concept, or the Indian concept, I think he even says, of this play, this lila maya. What other explanation can there be? And so we're not asked to do away with life. We're not asked to engage in such rigorous, arduous discipline, flogging ourselves and so on, sackcloth and ashes and all the rest of it. No, on the contrary. I'm tirelessly saying that the great atheist Ingersoll, and people in the engineering field would recognize the name Ingersoll to do with compressors. And he came across Swami Vivekananda, said to him, you see, the problem with all you spiritual types is you don't really enjoy life. And Swamiji's retort was very immediate. So he said, on the contrary, I know how to squeeze every drop of the orange of life. Because the extra enjoyment is catching the totality in everything, seeing the joy in all expressions of energy through hands and heads and hearts and speech and mind, seeing that flowing through everywhere on the one hand, and catching a glimpse of the totality on the other. And then we can personalize it with a sense of creative imagination, delightfully dancing and playing the game with the Lord himself. And the Lord only is the one that exists. The Bhagavatam says, and Krishna says in the Bhagavatam, I play this game on myself. It's not a cruel joke on you. I'm playing this on myself. It comes out separately in a volume extracted from the Bhagavatam, in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavatam, and translated and commentated on by Swami Purnananda. The last message of Krishna comes out like that. And there you'll find some beautiful, beautiful statements. It's also called the Uddhava Gita because it's a dialogue, a conversation with Krishna's dear, dear disciple Uddhava. And the last word is there. I'm playing a game on myself. It's not a cruel joke on you. Now, supposing we take this and say, I don't have to plan for the future because if I have faith, I understand that all my purpose will unfold before my very eyes by itself, effortlessly. Does it mean to say that there should be no goals? Overall, in the long-term purpose of life, one goal should be there, manifesting this divinity from within. Each soul is potentially divine. That basis. But then Swami Vivekananda, understanding that the goal may be future orientated, tells us about a process in the now that will help us get to it in future time. With this caveat that actually, with a corresponding matching grace, we can catch it now. If a cave has been dark for 1,000 years, says Ramakrishna, how long does it take to light? Instantly you can strike a match. But for most people, it's a progressive realization, something like Plato's cave, where progressively he sees the light and he realizes all the shadows are actually expressions of this light. So, supposing we now say, let me now be concerned about the future. Let me set goals and be completely goal-orientated. Then, of course, without that lack of faith means I'm relying on a process of T&E, trial and error. And if I put effort in myself, I would be responsible for the result. Yes, you will. No one denying it. But by posting it in the future, making it devoid of faith, and not focusing on the process of the now with concentration, mindfulness, that's the catchphrase today. Without being mindful of here and now, my concentration will waver, and every success is built on concentration. By catching this now moment, I can delight in the now and do the unit activity now with all my unit thoughts now and inserting the totality that we call the infinite invisible, the supreme, the one without a second, the Lord of the universe, doing it now, I get an extra value, I get a delight in this now moment. And all the anxiety to do with the doubt of the future goes away. I must achieve, means I have anxiety, I may fail. So that's the disadvantage of orientating the mind constantly toward the future. Post something in the future and leave it. And then understand the mechanism of what happens thereafter. Already accomplished. Already accomplished is not the future. It's not the present. It's the past tense. On the other side, the danger is commiserating and doubting in the past, regurgitating the previous second, the previous minute, and several years in advance, dwelling on that endlessly, regretting what if things had been better. Doing all that is equally useless and associated with the question, why? Don't ask why. Why not? What next? And the next moment will come. You don't have to look for it. It comes by itself. What will you fill in? Will you fill in anxiety with the future? Or will you take this present moment, find the richness within it, and enrich it further with pure thought, and take this present moment and all the access that you have of the totality of energy that appears here and now, mobilize it in a higher way with full attention of now, this second and the next second. Fortunately for us, things appear in units, seconds and minutes. Minutes to do with activities, seconds to do with thought. So we can think in a better way, and then we can use every minute with a current present activity, because every minute is now.
Swami, can I ask something?
Yes.
I suppose I'm just connecting with sometimes, and I try not to look too much on online activity, but if I'm just thinking about the darker aspects or the very negative intentions that maybe people in power might have upon us, and how our light can counteract that. But if things are done on us, or for example atrocities, we will be victims to that. I mean, I suppose I'm thinking about if I am really consciously staying in my present and staying with the purity of that of God, but something can still be done onto me that can really take me out of that place.
Yes, I mean, a great example is Jesus hanging on the cross. I assume he didn't go out of the present moment, though, you see. Great suffering was there, no doubt. The yogic idea is this: somebody who has attained that level of perfection will not really be suffering or willingly put on suffering, but have the capacity to detach. Because the easiest way and the best, most effective way out of pain is to stop the flow of consciousness flowing out through the sense organs to the object. So we can stay it for a moment. And if we can stay for a moment, we can stay it for longer. And if we can stay for longer, we can stay it for an immensely prolonged time. None of this I'm saying is easy, but training is not easy. The world is not easy. It's not designed to be easy. It's not meant to be easy. The game of rugby is not easy. People beat each other up, and they get off the field with bruises and broken noses. And then they congratulate each other, regardless of the team you're on, and they go and socialize. So we have to understand when something seems to come against us or comes against us directly, what is the cause of it? There is a possible threefold cause. Either we have brought it on ourselves through our own thinking, or it is something done to us by others, or it is simply part of the chaotic scheme of the universe, what insurance companies call act of God. We can't control it. Nevertheless, a stoic, steady attitude is the attitude. That has to be cultivated. The attitude of steady wisdom, transcending these three binding forces. So the more we practice the stability of things through seeing things in a more correct way and practicing this great practice of equilibrium, having an outlook which has equilibrium in it, seeing the totality everywhere, seeing that God in everything. The more we practice that, the more the mind becomes saturated with the idea, the more it becomes our second nature. And then we beam with it and we attract only goodness. Supposing we deliberately wish to attract somebody else's wrongdoings and the effects of that, yes, competent teachers will willingly do that. Jesus did it. There's a great theological validity in that Christ hung on the cross for our sins, willingly doing it. And every self-sacrificing incarnation does it, and every teacher does it. Out of sheer love for you, I'll take it on me. Don't worry. Somebody may have to make some extra effort. Cold packs, steam baths, careful diet, things like that. But still, you see, Holy Mother Sharada Devi said, don't worry, if you can't practice it, I'll do it for you. People were wondering, why do you do so much japa and so on? Well, because I've initiated so many people, and I know they may not practice anything, but they're my children. I'll do it for them. And the deal is that anybody who comes as a disciple or student, something like that, the teacher will lend the grace to them, and they will issue all their karmic effects on them, if you want to put it like that. Well, or good or bad, whether it's good or bad, all the effects will come. So yesterday was a feast of John of the Cross, and I was reading such a remarkable life because he wanted to, along with Teresa of Avila, reform the Carmelite order, because after some time corruption seeps in and the discipline is not what it should be, and therefore the process in spiritual life is not as it should be also. And so the two of them work together. Now, fellow Carmelite monks didn't like this. They actually kidnapped him, put him in a cell, something like a prison, flogged him, gave him meager, moldy food. So many atrocities were leveled against him. He registers it as most beautiful, the most valuable period of his life, where he was able to deepen his spiritual life, because on the other side he was able to withdraw and spend much more time in a meditative mood and get many mystic experiences from it. And that led him to poetry, and in the stanza of the poetry led him to expand on that for good of humanity for generations to come. So one virtue that we have to cultivate is what is called Titiksha, fortitude. We have to be strong, and we have to understand that there's no let up in spiritual life. There's no holiday for it. It's perpetual. We have to watch the condition of the mind at every given moment. We have to give it a much more positive bent whenever we find it's going down or going into some kind of negativity. We have to play that game. And when we do that, then we become a person of steady wisdom, operating for the benefit of all mankind, benefit of all, the welfare of all beings. Such great love is there. Does it mean that suffering has gone? No. Suffering may increase, but the capacity to withstand it, what cannot be cured, has to be endured. So that with that philosophical attitude, we proceed. But understanding also that there's a capacity to withdraw to a place of poise at any given moment, because that is your true nature. So yesterday, Tuesday on the talk, I pointed this out by way of a passage in the Kathopanishad, talking about the similarity of the senses and their objects with that eternal entity within you called the self. And discovering that is the central goal and purpose of your life. There are other goals, subsidiary goals, to do with your domestic life, your social life, your financial life, your physical life, and so on. But your central objective is this discovery of this divine self. See the language? Discovery of it. It's already there. It didn't have to be acquired in the future. It has to be uncovered in this present moment, here and now. So what is the spiritual life? We have to learn the art of tuning our attention into the glory of the self or God. And when it wavers, repeating it through a process of constant practice, constant remembrance, that becomes a delightful game. But it's all in this present moment. All in this present moment. You see, we think theologically that we'll attain everything in a post-mortem condition. Or if you believe in multiple incarnations, reincarnations, you think that's all right, next life, next life, next life. Thinking that, it'll be the next moment. The last moment of your physical life becomes your first moment on the other side. Your last thought becomes your first thought on the other side. Comparable to waking and dreamless sleep, that the last thought on going to bed is your first thought in morning waking consciousness. It's the same pattern repeating itself, only on a localized variation. A cosmic variation does the same thing. And the cycle of birth, life, and death does the same thing. It's the same thing as waking and dreamless sleep. The same pattern is repeated. The law of nature is completely and entirely constant. But we put it in different contexts. But you see, every second is the last moment. Every second is the blank check that we have to fill in. And however we fill in, it becomes the future for us. This is part and parcel of this law of karma. Karma simply means action, some activity going on. And all activity is prefixed by mental activity, thought. So we learn to steer the thought current in a useful way, in a divine way, in a positive way, in a joyful way. Then your life will be exactly like that. But you see, we can't avoid what we already sowed. It's a game of sowing and reaping. What we call prarabdha karma, compared to an arrow that has left the bow, you can't suddenly reach out and catch it. It's gone, finished. It will have its effect in the future. And even great souls who have attained some level of perfection, some level of sanctity and holiness, they will have to live out the effects still of their prarabdha karma. They may not necessarily be affected by it or attached to it further. Except you see this law is there, sowing and reaping. It's an undeniable causal fact. And the sooner we catch on to it, and it's not therefore that we do something to avoid the effects, because it would just be as bad. That'll be again living in the future with a sense of fear or a sense of disturbance. So yes, if you orientate the mind constantly in the future, then you'll be creating anxiety. That's the difficulty with most people. Either you'll be regurgitating all the effects of the past, all the things that happened then, like a cow chewing the cud, normally the cud of resentment over and over and over again. Well, that has no merit. But the damaging aspect of it will be, I'm chewing the cud now, I'm putting some guilt or shame or disturbance in now, and now that becomes the disturbance and difficulty of the future. So we can't afford that. We have to catch ourselves in midstream, not repress it or suppress it, but give it a brand new course, a new direction. That's all we do.
Swami, can I ask a question, please?
Yes, of course.
Apart from Vivekananda's supreme goal of manifesting the divinity within us, and I'm sure you've already answered this question before I ask it, actually, but future-orientated goals, are they not by their very nature limited to what our knowledge and experience already is? So therefore it leaves us that we are not able to achieve the potentiality of the unknown, what might happen, and we're open for the opportunity. Like the great inventors, I'm sure didn't think I'm going to have a goal of inventing a telephone or inventing, whatever the great inventions were. So by their very nature, are they not extremely limiting?
Yes, but there's an aspect to inventiveness, creative inventiveness, because you hear the expression, it came to me. Well, when did it come to you? In the future? No, it came to me now. Unexpectedly, it came. So when we talk about creative invention, I don't think we can put it in a future-orientated context. Now, there may be a problem that people ruminate over. And the key to this tapping into our creativity is to allow that rumination with the confidence that the Lord of the universe has the answer stored away somewhere, and in its own time, unexpectedly, will bring it out, maybe while brushing the teeth, maybe while walking, maybe while driving, maybe while in the shower, maybe you get a eureka moment. So this comes. So it's very easy to see the pattern of creativity that emerges. Having said that, if I get your question correct, if you're setting small goals in the future orientated around this small circle of life, containing physical needs and psychological and emotional needs, including the external extension of that to domestic and social needs. So if you're setting goals in this area, and that becomes more the shift of your attention, so that you don't see outside that small circle to the broader, longer view of things. So Vivekananda's "Each soul is potentially divine" is a broad and deep goal. It is outside the scope of our normal efforts. And so, yes, if all our energy is steered toward the temporary goals, we'll miss the grand prize. Yes. It's like saying, I'm satisfied with small things. I'm satisfied with little toys. Instead of, I have the grand treasure at my disposal.
That's it exactly, Swami. Gee, that's what I was thinking yet.
You hit the nail on the head, Swami, and so did Jean.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there are a number of examples, you see. If people not knowing the value of a diamond, they'll take it to a brinjal seller and he'll say, what is this worth? And he'll say, oh, I'll give you 3 brinjals for it. He's thinking in terms of brinjals or eggplants, you see. But you take it to a jeweler will know the value of it. So we have an internal treasure. And the language is the same across the board. The treasure, this is an example given by Jesus himself. See, it's like the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure, and you go and dig for it. It's like a mustard seed that grows into an enormous tree where the birds of the air come and settle into it. See, so there's something valuable in us, not obvious to us, if we have an outward vision. It requires an inward turn. It requires an inward vision to access this great treasure. And once we found it, of course, now there's another great example, again, I'm quoting 19th century mystics, Sri Ramakrishna, and he gives the example of a forester going to a forest and earning a meager living, and then he hears an inspiring voice from within. Voice from within is normally interpreted as a voice from outside. But as you get more connected with this inner voice, you realize, no, it's actually from within. And it says, go deeper, go deeper. And as he goes deeper, he discovers all trees sandalwood. And he goes and collects the sandalwood and makes a nice profit in the marketplace. But the voice is persistent. Go further, go further, go deeper, go deeper. Please go forward. And as he goes forward, he discovers a wonderful silver mine. And then as this whole episode gets repeated, with the urge, go further, go further, go deeper, find out what's within. You find it then gold and then diamonds and so on and so forth, like that. He finds it. So in this same way, we can't be satisfied with just a small version of it. There's a great danger in spiritual life about it also. In meditation, we find a great joy and we think, oh yes, that seems to be it. But we have to learn to go further and go further. And spiritual life, really, when we say spiritual life, we mean the dedicated spiritual activities that assist in manifesting this divinity from within. That has to be intensified on a daily basis. A teacher can inquire from a student, how is your spiritual practice? Oh, fine. I'm doing it regularly every day. Well, a good teacher may then ask, but is it getting deeper every day? Or is it intensifying every day? Has it produced tears? Does your heart move with it? Have you experienced that sense of oneness, even for a brief moment? Is it being extended for you? So that's the point.
Swami, can I ask one more question?
Yes.
It's around sound and sound healing and the frequency of God.
Around what?
Sound.
Oh, sound. Okay. Sorry.
Northern Irish sound.
Yes.
And the frequency of that sound. And I was listening to a sound healer talking about certain notes, and I suppose I was thinking of God's frequency, and is there a musical translation of that, and can we, that's my question.
Well, of course, they may not know that you probably have a mantra that is given by a guru. And so contained with that might be a bija mantra, that is a sound, is a gross embodiment of a subtle sound. Of course, that is the most powerful thing you could ever have.
Thank you. Okay.
We have to be quite careful in the COVID era that we don't out of sheer boredom. There should be no boredom, because a spiritual life mitigates completely against boredom. But anyway, there may be a temptation to tune into this or that, and divert the mind to unwarranted areas, particularly areas that collectively we could probably describe as New Age. When somebody says, I'm a sound healer, it rings alarm bells within me, because anybody who says I'm a healer has got it wrong, in the sense that the pride of somebody who says I can heal mitigates against real healing. That is, going to the very core of healing. You see, if we go to the core of anything, we'll find that entity that Jesus found in his life, and he was the greatest healer. But he didn't set about saying, I'm a healer. He set about by seeing things in a different way, using catchphrases. And so a lame man comes to him, he doesn't see any lame. He sees deep inside, there is the Father in heaven in all perfection, standing there. And the Father is not lame at all. It's the sum totality of everything, full and free and magnificent and perfect. Seeing that perfection shines through, the lame man walks. The blind man sees. The leper gets cured. The dead awake. So what was this wiring that Jesus had? The kind of different way of looking at things that penetrates to the heart of something, and there you'll find what we call in philosophy the Atman, the eternal self, the authentic self, that entity that is one without a second, that infinite invisible, that perfection one, that perfect one. Knowing that, all grieving goes, all doubt goes, all fear goes. And the positive side of that, the perfection shines through. Don't forget the power of our own thought. So this repetition of the mantra that is given by a teacher with the appropriate lineage and so on and so forth is the most powerful tool that you have. Most powerful sound that you have. Sorry, somebody was talking.
Sean, I was I bought a book that you'd recommended a long time ago, The Sermon on the Mount According to Vedanta.
Yes.
By Swami Purnananda.
Yes.
Very good. It's lighting a spark again.
Yes. Because you see, the whole of the message of Jesus is really condensed and contained in that area of Matthew, I think it is. And so, yes, even the symbology of it, how would we make a high teaching? We can teach to many people, but good teachers, the best of teachers, will reserve their highest teaching for their intimate disciples. Swami Vivekananda, of course, in America, engaged an agency, lecture agency, and soon he became completely disgruntled with it because he was talking to people who were only interested on the surface, and the real teaching was reserved for people in Thousand Island Park and so on and so forth, a small group of devotees sitting on the grass around him, like Jesus. So all deliveries of importance in the Judeo-Christian, in the Abrahamic tradition, because all the revelations of Muhammad were also on a hill in a cave above Mecca. And Moses got all his teachings from Mount Sinai. So mountain is symbolic. This is there, the highest teaching is going to happen. And so the Sermon on the Mount is to his intimate disciples. And there you'll find in condensed form the beautiful teachings. The Beatitudes are there, each one a precious gem. Now, because Vedanta is also teaching, is also concerned with the very highest of teachings and the essence of truth, no doubt what Jesus is saying is exactly Vedanta. And so when you have a book, beautiful book, Sermon on the Mount according to Vedanta, then we see not only the similarities, but we see the deeper aspects of what Christ intended in that sermon. It's a beautiful way of looking at it and capturing the whole of Christianity in a nutshell, actually, at its deepest level. You see, when Christian theology declares only through me, because it's inserted there, I am the way, I am the gate, and so on and so forth, we forget that all the other teachers before Jesus said the same thing. Now, can there be more than one gate? No. It's not like that. When Jesus spoke, he was speaking from the position of word, the position of the cosmic mind, the cosmic Christ. And when he said I, he was talking from that point of view, not the historical Jesus point of view. And unfortunately, that's created many exclusivist difficulties. Because common sense will tell us of the similarities in every religion. Unfortunately, people highlight all the differences. But when you look at the sameness, you're looking at the fundamental basis, the substratum of every religion, and it's the same. And the journey within may be, the structure of it, the pathway of it, may be individually different. But the opening up, step by step, is the same. And the ultimate discovery is the same. And when you come to translate that to those who never experienced it, the vast majority of listeners, you'll have to put it in language familiar to them. They may take that language and be much more literal with it. So there are two ways of taking these teachings: the literalist way and the actual way. What is taken literally and what it actually means. The letter of the law and the spirit. These two things are different. And one could lead to the other, of course, by the way, no doubt. But we have to let go, you see, we have to let go of trends, and change is difficult. Swami Vivekananda put it so beautifully in his Raja Yoga that change is like carving new roads in the brain, making new roads, new pathways in the brain. This was long before we discovered such a thing as what's called neuroplasticity, where you take up something new, and when you measure the new pathways, neurological pathways in the brain, you see clearly a before and after picture. And so as people get older, they should take up new hobbies, new interests. They should keep the mind active, learn something new every day. Not just for the sake of filling a head with information or diverting the mind away, but by virtue of keeping the brain active. Keep making sure that our mindfulness is always available to us. Because there are two ways, two expressions of mindfulness. You can say mindful, or you can say the mind is full. And the latter part we just have to avoid. All right. So we leave off there. Thank you for your questions. Always valuable. So, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.